the Legal Corner podcast series. Welcome to today's episode of The Legal Corner, a podcast which covers a variety of legal issues to keep you informed. Hosted by attorney at law Colin Dinoon and communications specialist Leonardo Torres.
Glad to be back with you on another episode of the Legal Corner podcast series. Leonardo isn't here today again because of our commitments. I know you'll be joining us at some time during this course of our second season. In today's episode, we'll be looking at practical considerations when buying and selling property. Some of you may recall that in season 1, we had an interview with Mr. Nestor Dino Aloy, attorney at law, where we dealt with property law in Trinidad and Tobago. In this episode, we will be examining that from another angle. More specifically, I will be chatting with a real estate agent in the person of Mr. Gerard Andrews. Just to tell you a bit about him, Gerard Andrews is a Caribbean professional who wears two complementary hats. On one side, he is a consultant at Cadco Design Studio, an architectural design build firm, where he generates business leads and champions business development activities. On the other side, he is a legal real estate agent. He's the lead legal real estate agent at Dwell and Associates Real Estate Ltd. He especially seeks to enrich the lives of first-time buyers and sellers of homes and properties, aiding them in obtaining and selling their first home, all while solving their real estate challenges. Mr. Andrews has a keen interest in real estate investing, good business, art, design, is a lover of podcasts, and marveled by innovation. And I will add to that he's a past student of St. Benedict's College, and he is a loyal listener of the podcast. Good day to you, Gerard, and welcome to Legal Corner.
Glad to be here, Colin. Glad to be here.
I am glad we are finally making this happen. You know, this has been in the works for some time.
Yes.
But thankfully, today is the day. Today is the day. All right, Gerard. So we're going to get right into it. I want you to tell us, what is the role of a real estate agent in a land transaction?
Okay, Colin. So it's funny. I had this conversation with a client last year because they themselves are just trying to ascertain where the real estate agent would fall in this whole transaction other than marketing, right? So I would say that it depends on who the realtor or the real estate agent is representing, right? Either the purchaser or the seller. The real estate agent has to see the best interest of the client, I call them, most important. Most time, the real estate agent represents both sometimes. However, it isn't the ideal situation, as you would know. So again, it really depends on who the agent is representing, whether they're representing the buyer or the seller. And I don't know if time would permit, but I want to share a very short story on how crucial that point is.
Sure.
All right. So I had a buyer whereby she's very interested. She and her husband is very interested in this house. And the thing about it is that, things were moving very smoothly. I mean, it was a high figure to start with in the couple of millions. And during the course of the transaction, I found that certain things weren't adding up all too right with regards to the legitimacy of the property. And it just so happened that the property, right, did not come back at the evaluated price that the purchaser, whom I represented at the point in time, was looking at. So, which would have meant to say that the terms would have changed, and they would now be more or less having to come out of the deal because of that. But as I said before, you being the real estate agent who's representing the purchaser at the point in time, you have to seek their best interest. So, obviously through different networks and trying to understand, this entire thing, they sought legal counsel, and we were able to ascertain that actually the land the property was not yet the owner's property. Imagine he was more or less touting it as his own. And because of that little loophole, they were able to get out of it. Now, had I been just representing the seller and this buyer had nobody to represent them, Colin, you could imagine being out of pocket of somewhere close to $250,000.
Right. So in that case,
really,
you were able to assist the purchaser by sending them to get legal advice.
Correct, because I myself was a little concerned as to the legitimacy of the land itself. I mean, it would have probably come up definitely later on in the searches, but we were able to get that done. And I'm just glad that, again, you really needs the real estate agent needs to represent their client at that point, and whether it be the buyer or the seller, the best interest.
All right, now there are so many real estate agents out there. How does someone go about selecting a real estate agent to work with?
Okay, that's a very good question, actually, because as I said before, there's a good bit of us out there, now more than ever because of what happened in 2020, right? A lot of people are looking to, find different ways to generate wealth, and real estate is one of the well-known ways of doing that. So the market or the industry has been flooded with very new agents coming up, right? And a realtor or a real estate agent, Colin, is really a sales professional at the end of the day, right? Who has knowledge of real estate and the market. So the things that you're looking out for would basically be their ability as a sales professional. So to me, if it is that anybody listening wants to have takeaways, the top 3 things that I would personally look in an agent is evidence or to show their ability to effectively market or find property that meets the needs of the client. Second to that, there's the evidence to show that they are knowledgeable about the market that they are in. Now, the good news is that I can only speak for myself. I am fortunate enough that I work for, as you would have said in my bio, for the architectural firm as being well as a real estate agent. And that bodes well for me because, I know I'm exposed more to that side of things post-sale, meaning to say that, when it is that somebody is purchasing land, I'm able to tell them, well, you have to look out for the setbacks. You don't want which is the legal requirement of amount of space in feet that you need to leave between the house and the boundary. So, all these things are, will add to, you being a very good sales professional in real estate. And finally, the third takeaway I would say, or thing that you should look out for in a real estate agent is evidence of their ability to negotiate on your behalf, which kind of goes back to the first question you mentioned, with regards to, what is the role of that real estate agent, not only in land, but in property, if not to represent the person who they are doing business on behalf of. So I now have to get the best price for both the seller and the best price for the buyer.
Now, so you'd have spoken to us about, choosing a good real estate agent and all the different things like that. But how does someone go about setting the selling price for property that they have on the market?
I love working with sellers, right? Interesting people, because these are, hardworking people who would have taken their time to obtain their property, whether through their own finances or inheritance. And it means a lot to them because owning that piece of real estate in any form or fashion is a great thing. And, with that, they themselves would have a price that they would put on the property. But if it is they were to ask us, the agents, well, I have this piece of property and I really want to put it out there in the market. I want to get it sold. What is your opinion on it? So in the rare instances where they ask us for our opinion, Colin, to me, I send them to the official channels. The official channel would require them to hire a registered valuation company to provide them with a valuation of the property. However, when listing, most sellers would not want to incur that cost. So, leaving the agent now, to basically do their own research to find out how much that figure is. And well, Colin, the other channel which we as real estate agents use is our network, our fellow brother and sister in the field, right? Who they basically would have sold a house, and you would ask them, well, okay, well, how much you sold this house for, or this particular, I think land is a better example. How much you sold this particular plot of land for? Well, boy, I sold it. It's 5,000 square feet. We sold it at 500,000, so $100 per square foot, right? So you automatically know as a realtor now to go based on that cost per square footage figure to go back to the owner. So let's just say that the owner has 10,000 square foot of land in the same area that you just checked, that the last plot of land that was sold recently sold for $100 per square foot. So therefore, you will now place that value on it, where it is you take that 10,000 square feet, multiply by the 100, and you get 1 million. But again, so we have the official and the unofficial channel.
And what should persons consider before making an offer to purchase property?
Now, Colin, if I tell you something, this is the most important part of it, i.e., the offer. Because I know you would respect this and appreciate this as a law professional, but these initial documents set the foundation, and I will be using a lot of building terms throughout this interview here. This conversation here, Colin. But the offer presents and sets up the perfect foundation for the rest of the deal. So it is therefore the most important part. And just to answer your question, besides the budget, it always boils down to the long-term needs of the buyer or the purchaser, right? So I want to highlight at least three of those needs, because there's a good bit of needs that really depends on the family structure, depends on the work-life balance that the person has. But the top three that I experience in every day is one, the proximity to work and support system. For me personally, Colin, that is a critical thing, because my family is growing, and I'm originally from South Trinidad, where all we know is a support system. Your uncle is basically picking you up from karate lessons. Your aunt is carrying you here, there, everywhere. Your parents rely heavily on that support system. So, a lot of my buyers or purchasers, they seek somewhere that is close to their support system, right? Also, too, with regard to close to the proximity to work, right? Because if it is that you are, now, let's just say, for example, living South Trinidad, but you're working around the savannah, and you find yourself in a predicament where you spend 4 hours in soul crushing traffic every day, your need automatically becomes that you want something that the proximity to work is, definitely close, right? Moving on to the other 2 points that I want to highlight is that if you are a first-time homeowner on a budget, a critical factor that you have to consider when it is that you're making that offer is considering that flat land is the ideal scenario, right? Yes, some people would think that it comes down to dollars and cents, but no, it comes down to the dollars and cents after the fact that you would have purchased the land. And if it is the land is not flat as a first-time home buyer, Colin, you're asking for trouble, because here it is that you would now may have to purchase more material to facilitate the retention of that land itself if it's sloping, right? So to add to that, and the last point that I want to just kind of touch on is you want to make sure that you are able to get a good deal, right? Now, what really defines a good deal when it comes to real estate? And I would say the one thing that really defines it is equity. And when I say equity, I mean in the sense of that if it is a piece of land is valued at $1 million or $5 million, you want to be sure that you are able to get a deal below that price. Now, it is not ideal, right? It is something that does not happen all the time, especially in this fluctuating market. But when it is that you're making a deal, you need to consider how much equity that you are getting on that lot of land, because that equity comes back to aid you in the home building process. When it is you have to now go back to the bank, let's just say that there are cost overruns, and you now have to explain to the bank, well, here this, I have this plot of land, the same land that I now would have had some equity in, and I want to use that. So, having that equity is always beneficial, not only for you, but for your children, your future generations, knowing very well that they are inheriting something that is already going to benefit them in a great way through that equity. So, but Colin, do you want me to break down what equity is? I know a lot of people tend to have not have the understanding of what it is, but you let me know.
Yeah, you can go ahead, Jared.
Okay, great. So, just to use very simple figures, I want to use let's just say $1 million. So, um, if it is that a lot of land is valued at $1 million, and you would have purchased it for 800,000, the equity that you would have gained from that lot of land would be 200,000. Now, how do you use that equity? You use that equity as now collateral, to go back to the bank and say, here's what I own this plot of land, but if it is you do a valuation, you'd realize that it's actually worth much more than what I would have purchased it at. So that difference in price is really the equity that you have in it. It's not something that you could get, financially so easily out of the land. But again, the equity being there is something that you could access later on, right? It's basically a stake that you have in that land.
Excellent. Now, on a drive through the country, I would see varying developments taking place. Over time, I would see certain developments would have taken off, whereby all of the lots would have been sold. Different businesses may have been established and so on. Some developments are even expanding, when others seem to be less successful, with lots remaining unsold for years, or some developments have even failed to obtain sales for lots. So I want you to talk to us about what would make one development sell more than others or be more successful than others.
I'm really happy you asked that question, because this is something that I'm very much involved in on a weekly basis, as where my professional services align, right? And I want to pinpoint something. You said something interesting there. How you phrase the question, Colin, is that you said success, right? As you and I both know, people have various definitions for success. Some want money and some want time, right? Now, the interesting thing is that developments give and they take both of those two things, money and time, right? But to basically generalize, to give a more concise answer, the first thing, and I know that I'm talking in trees here, right? I tend to, because it's easier to remember. The first thing that I always tell clients is that location, location, location. It is the most cliche saying, but it is very, very, very important, because just to give you some figures, I was talking to a colleague in the industry, and he came across the startling news that we have only used or utilized 11% of our buildable land space in this country. Meaning to say there are other 89% more of land that we could actually utilize for building homes and structures and
That's
so
a
on.
very small amount that has been used, only 11%.
Correct. You would think it's more, huh? You would think it's more.
Yeah.
And because of that, it just goes to show that, to prove that point, that location is everything, Colin. So, if it is that you have a development poised next to a major roadway or highway, and it has very easy access to amenities, that land will sell. Opposed to the land that is about 10 to 15 minutes drive inside. No, actually, no, that's pretty good when you think about it. Let's just say 30 minutes inside, right? Which is bombarded by traffic on a morning and a evening. And anything for you to get, let's just say you have to get medicine for your sick child in the middle of the night, it's hard, then that development is not going to thrive, right? There must be other factors that you could, now factor in to make it successful. So that leads me to my next point. Other than location, network. A lot of the developments, Colin, that you see getting that traction and that success is that when it is well networked. And what I mean by that is that the owners or the developers have a good connection with different financial institutions, mainly like credit unions or the banks, and also too that they are willing to work with realtors. Um, it is a very funny relationship sometimes because some developers do not want to work with realtors; they rather have their own in-house, and it's a funny situation. That as much as I could go on to. I don't want to take up too much time going into depth with that. But if it is that you have the proper network, you basically, well, I mean, you need network with to get a development going, eh? But network, you definitely need that network to really to get your feelers out there and to let people know that the land is available. And finally,
So it's not a
approvals
one-man
and
show. It's not a one-man show to say you have a
it
development
is
and you will do all your sales and everything like that.
yeah, which man, some developers I've seen, really crash and burn horribly because they assume that they could do everything themselves. And you see, they want to go back to their partners and say, hey, you know what, I did this. I mean, with all due respect, I understand that, and I understand that you want to call something your own and say that you actually did this, but it takes it takes a lot more than that in order to get that kind of success out of developmental works or development, right? And finally, Colin, I would say that once it is that you have the proper approvals and value for money, we're not touching too much into this. Proper approvals is important. If it is that it's so important that if it is that I am a developer is approaching us to sell his lots or her lots, and he doesn't have or she doesn't have proper approvals. I tell them off the top of my head one time, we have two options. Is either we are walking away from this opportunity, or you could sit down and have a conversation with my colleagues here at the architectural firm. They will gladly help you and assist you in getting those approvals so we can start selling, start doing some real estate, start getting these lands sold, right? And of course, value for money. You want to put, you don't want to overprice your development, Colin. You want to put it at what the market is calling for it right now, so that you can now move on to your other development. Yeah.
So is it that for development to be successful, it has to be located in an urban or suburban area, or are developments in more rural type areas also successful?
Right. So that's a good question because it really depends on who it's attracting. So for example, there's a development that we have that the owner had about 40 acres of land. And instead of him chopping it up into 5,000 square feet lots, he would have more or less gotten the approval for homestead, which means it's about like 1 acre lots of land. And I will tell you something, that's in the countryside, right? There are retirees, as in Trinidadian doctors who would have gone to the UK and would like to return home for their retirement, who don't want the hustle and the bustle, and they would want to plant some fruit trees and probably be next to nature. They would happily purchase that, from you. But again, it goes back to the approvals. Imagine if it is that same developer was like, nah, I want to sell my entire 40 acres of land here to somebody, and they must give me exactly what I want. No, sometimes you have to be smart about it. You have to be strategic. You have to go for the right approvals, probably subdivide the land, and then get it sold. So that's another factor as well, too, Colin.
You have any advice you would give to someone who is now getting into the market as a developer? What are some of the things they should look out for? What are some of the things they should keep in mind?
Right. So things to keep in mind is that you need the correct team. You need the people who in your corner who could assist you with getting the approvals. Let's just say that you come from the food industry and your family would have left you an inheritance, and you want to go into development now, but you don't have any clue as to how you're going to get the approvals, but you have a friend, right, who isn't in the industry who told you, well, hey, you can just go and chop up the land and sell it. I would urge you on the side of caution, and I would tell you to spend the time and the money and the effort now to go and speak to the professionals, deal with that with a team of people, and calling it kind of snowballs from there, right? As in all the young developers, they need to at least sit down and have conversations with people who are well into the industry itself.
Do real estate agents have a role when it comes to HDC houses?
In the initial stages of the HEC development, no. As in that is a whole entirely different system in the initial rounds. However, what happens is that people's lives change, their lifestyle changes as well, their family situations change, where that the starter home, which would have been an HEC home, they would have outgrown it, and they want to go into the process of selling that right now. It is a process. Some years have to pass, I could tell you that. And but yes, as in agents do resell. It's a more of a reselling situation, if it is you want to look at it like that. And so yeah, right now I'm actually involved in a deal where the property was owned by the state lands, and what is currently going on right now is that yeah, the owner is free to sell the property, and she would have hired us as her agents to do so.
Is there any difficulty in selling such properties as opposed to what I would call a property that is not aligned with the state in that way?
Just to be clear on what you're asking if it is difficult to sell the HEC homes?
Yes.
It's not difficult if it is that you know who to go to, i.e. the lawyers, right? If it is that there are any HEC owners right now listening to this podcast and you are interested in selling your home, I would say before even going to the realtors, you go to the lawyers first. Ask the lawyers, what is the process? Because it is a legal scenario at that point, where it is you now have to get certain T's crossed and I's dotted. I could give you an example, Colin. Like we have, but from the architectural standpoint, we'd have done a house plan for a client. However, she was sold some Caroni lands, right? And because she would have been sold these Caroni lands, Caroni still owned those lands. So she now has to go to Caroni and get permission and all these other stuff. And the only reason why she was able to find out this information is because we would have guided her to go to a legal clerk, or who we know, or an attorney who we know to properly guide her. So definitely seek it's very apt because it's part of what you guys can talk about on a regular on the podcast.
At this point, we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back. Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Right before the break, we were having a nice conversation as it relates to HEC homes and the fact that there's no real difference in the market preference to purchasing those homes. I want to talk now about purchasing property for persons out there who may be considering buying a home or making an investment. When would you say is the best time to purchase property?
Right now. So let me expound a little bit, Colin. Now is the time. There really is no right or wrong time to buy real estate, Colin. It might be the right time for an investor, but it might not be the right time for a first-time buyer, and vice versa. You understand where I'm coming from?
Yes.
Yeah, so the right time is now. If it is that it's critical though, it's crucial that you prepare yourself for the time when you do decide to buy. Certain things you have to put in place first. So for example, to ensure that your savings are in order. Colin, you would not believe how many times, and I want that if it is the listeners who are hearing this, and if it is that you are, seeking to purchase your first home and your savings, you don't have your down payment, I can tell you something. You're going to basically waste your time and everybody else's time if it is that you do not have your savings in order. And I'll tell you why. Most of the times, we strive to get deals for our clients. And if it is that that deal comes up, that deal has a timeline, it has a very small window. So, for example, if it is that there's a property for $2 million on the market that is most desirable by a lot of people, but the owner is taking a liking to you as the buyer, and he's telling you, well, here's what, if you come with your down payment check tomorrow, with your sales agreement and your lawyer, we ready we ready to pull the trigger to move forward with this, and then only for the purchaser to come back and tell us, the real estate agent, that hey, I'm still trying to scrape up the down payment. I mean, I'm not upset because I know how hard it is, but at the same time too, it is something that happens quite common a lot of times, where it is that you don't have your savings in order. Ladies and gentlemen, you need to have your savings in order, at least to take advantage of any deal that comes up. And to continue on the trail of why you should buy now is that things to consider before you're buying and stuff is that you have to speak with all the professionals who work within that process first, right? So to prepare yourself to purchase that plot of land, you now have to talk to the architect or the draftsman, anybody that you feel comfortable with designing your house, to know how much of house could go with your budget. Because it does not make sense. Colin and I would have had a incident where a young couple, they saw this really lovely piece of land in Santa Cruz, and they went ahead and they bought it for 1.3 million, and they were qualified for 1.8, and they were obvious the opinion that they could get a house built for for that remainder, which is the 1.8 minus 1.3, 500,000. They told us, well, yes, we could build a nice two-story house for 500,000, and that was not the case, right? After they did a consultation with me, they would have gone to various other persons, and eventually the land went back up on the market for sale, because again, they're now in a position where it is, if they went ahead with building on that lot of land, they would have encountered some serious problems, right? Where it is that they may not have gotten the house they wanted, right? And finally,
Well,
I
that's
always
an
repeat to them,
important point. That's an important point. So then
yeah,
that
yeah, it
begs the
is.
question that person should even consider talking to an architect while they are
Yes,
they're talking about purchasing property. So at least they could have the two things happening at the same time.
Colin, that is so very critical. It's not even funny. I would have saved many a people, even though I break many hearts every week with the brass tacks, with the facts. I do also save them, because I keep telling them that it is better to have the hard conversation now than you have a very difficult time later on, as in a tough time with your pocket.
There's this question that always circulates. Is it better to build your own home as a young person, or should you look to buy a home that is already built?
Oh, I love to answer this question all the time. Um, it's funny because right now in this market that we are seeing here, um, it is very close. Before, I would say back in our parents' time, I could tell you, like my family home, which I grew up in, my mother, she would have spent only a quarter million to build our house, but the house is about 4,000 square feet. It's a big house, and now I could never imagine building a 4,000 square feet house with just a quarter million dollars. So a lot has changed over the years, and it's something that we have to consider. So okay, let's try to ascertain it, right? I could draw a reference, right? Um, when you are building, Colin, the beauty of that is that you get to see what's actually going into the ground, opposed to you buying a house from a developer or a builder, and you do not know what corners he would have cut, right, to get that house completed. Now, I'm not saying that all contractors or all developers cut corners to benefit themselves. No, on the contrary, I actually have very, very good relationships. A good bit of our clients are very, very stand up citizens, and they are actually trying to seek, I can say, a mutually beneficial opportunity where they could sell these lots of lands to families and even sell these homes to families, and it's actually of good quality. But again, one of the pros is that you for building is that you get to actually see what's going inside, what's going inside of your home. Um, the benefit to you buying something now is just that time, right? Whereas you have to take about 2 years to build that house, you would probably take about 2 to 3 months to close on the deal for that new property so your family could actually move into the house. So you see, there's a lot of back and forth with it. Colin, just for the sake of time and everything, if you're okay with it, I could know that I could actually direct people to our website where they could actually go and download a free copy of a guide that we would have developed called the four step home ownership guide. It's basically a guide to home ownership, and it does answer that question thoroughly in depth, whether it's good to build or to buy. I just basically pulled 2 points from that small booklet, which is free, of
Yeah, you
course.
can
It's
mention
one
it and
website.
I'll add it in the show notes so that person will have
Okay,
access to it
fantastic,
after.
fantastic. So you can basically go on. We have a website that provides what you call it. Um, it provides starter homes, right? Pre-designed house plans for young couples seeking to, or young professionals seeking to build their first home. On that website, we have a free copy of the four-step home ownership guide that you could go and download for free, because I mean we believe that this information should be something that is shared. The website is called www.hd, as in H for home, D for development, 3D, as in the figure 3 and D for development, stock.com. So www.hd3dstock.com. Yeah. So yeah, Colin, you can find out a lot more information there.
All right, Jared, good. What advice you'd give to a young person who wants to be a real estate agent?
um, Good question. The first thing I would say to them is that very good that you're thinking of using real estate as a vehicle to propel you in this life to greater heights, both financially and with regards to you understanding how it is to own and build and work in your first home. And the best advice I would have for them right now is to get some mentorship. Go and literally work for one of the larger firms, get a feel for it. It's something that is not done a lot in our society because we tend to glorify entrepreneurship, which is a good thing, right? But glorify it in the sense that we do not prepare young people for the sweat equity that needs to go into you being your own boss. And when it is that you're playing with real large assets in the form of real estate, you do not want to make mistakes, right? So I would urge any young person. I mean, you have to define young, Colin. It's have some people listening to the podcast who are very young at heart, and they very much want to get into real estate.
Yeah,
So
it could work both
yeah,
ways.
so
Young
yeah,
in
it can work both
biological
ways.
age, but also
Right.
young in terms of your career, as the case might be.
Yeah, because there's no school to really go to learn real estate in depth. And I don't want to not shine light on the fact that there are courses that could be taken in Roy Tech and these other places. I mean, our team actually would have been trained by a gentleman by the name of Linwal Bihari, He has trained many agents because he actually worked in the real estate market in the US, in LA, Los Angeles to be exact. And he decided to bring that knowledge and wisdom back to Trinidad to train young people who want to get into real estate. And he is a mentor of ours. And I would urge people, young people, if it is that you have a young person now and you don't want to go through any, formal means, which you may have to eventually because there is the real estate bill that is now in the process of being Colin, what is the correct legal term? You need to help me on this.
Regulated?
Currently being regulated. And it would require you to do certain to do certain steps in order to become a realtor or real estate agent in Trinidad and Tobago. So, two things. I would do my homework. I would study that bill. I would also probably seek to do the short course to really see that if real estate is for you.
Right, as we get ready to wrap up, Gerard, do property values in Trinidad ever decrease at all, or do they just keep going up?
Oh boy, this is a very controversial question, Colin, and I'm going to answer it with a story, and I'll leave the audience to really glean from that. So as I said earlier, there are various channels that you could go to inquire about the value of your land. So in my early career, the first home that I would have listed, right? You want to do the right thing. So I went ahead and I encouraged the owner to do a valuation, as I would have told you all before, that you should, seek, to do a valuation on the property. Valuation was done, and the house would have come in at without being too specific on the figures, I would say that it came in at let's just say it came in at $3.8 million, right? For the property. And the property stayed on the market for a while because, again, it was not a brand new home. It was a family home that was big. And, the other homes around that same price of the 3.8 million, people could buy brand new homes, that they were very happy with. So it was a difficult yes, your first sale has always been a difficult sale. And but luckily I would have found them a buyer, and we went through the process. Now that buyer would have gone to a valuation company because obviously they went through a financial institution to purchase the house. And the valuation company came back and valued that same property that was valued at 3.8 million 2 years prior to now value it at 3.5 million. So Colin, I just want to leave it at that. That has been my experience. To me, the average person, the average Joe on the street would assume that a house being an asset, you would think that it would rise in value.
Well, we'll all have to come to our own conclusion on that one. Gerard, how can people get in contact with you if they are desirous of learning more?
Oh, excellent, man. I love to have conversations. So they can basically contact me via my phone number, which is which I give it out freely, 374-7617. Right. Again, that number again is 374-7617. And if it is that you want to, either do your development and you want to create a development or pursue doing developments, and we can have a chat. Or if it is you want to build or buy your first home, we can definitely have a chat as well, as Colin was imparting. Yeah.
Gerard, thanks so much for coming on the podcast, and all the best to you in your endeavors.
Hey, it was a pleasure, man. I really love what you guys are doing. I mean, as you said it yourself, I'm a loyal listener. I really look forward to it because as a Caribbean person, it's really good to hear someone with your accent over the radio waves, because I listen to a lot of podcasts and they do not sound like us, So
Yeah.
it's always good, and I always want to encourage. I mean, you guys right now are inspiring me, to pursue it. So I definitely want to tell you how honored I am to be a guest on your podcast, Colin, and an extension, Master Torres.
Thank you for listening to the Legal Corner podcast series. For more information, please visit us at our Facebook or Instagram pages or send your comments to thelegalcornerpodcast@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you.